that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell, the famous Tom Fennell, who I had been afraid only a moment ago was not going to be here, but he came. How do you like that? Every day I go to the internet and I spend hours and hours looking, usually about 4 hours, looking for news. That's a very blue shirt I've got on.
Looks blue to me, I tell you.
Gosh.
Doesn't look that blue from here.
What can I say? I spent hours looking at the news, finding out what's going on with energy and climate change, and every news item I like or find interesting, I get a 50-word or 55-word synopsis and I package it with a link to the original article and put it up at my blog, which is now geoharvey.com. I have upgraded.
What was it?
It was geoharvey.wordpress.com.
Oh, okay.
Either will work. They both still work. Anyway, I put them up there, and the dates that we have here, if you go to the blog, geoharvey, geoharvey.com, you can you'll see a calendar there. You can click on the date and find the news item that we're talking about and just do it.
So you got a website now?
It's my own website, and you can even go there and click on the PayPal thing and donate money if that's what you want to do. I'm in desperate need of a new brain to save my reputation. You can pay for my brain transplant. Okay. So we're starting on September 1st, and which is a week ago from today, and we have a picture coming up, and that's a picture of Quechee, Vermont, and an item that comes from Clean Technica. What's the title of this?
Economic growth won't keep up with hurricane damages. That's scary.
It is. The Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research recently released a study on hurricane losses. The researchers concluded that not only will the financial damages from hurricanes increase dramatically by the end of the century, but that the rate of economic growth will not keep up with the hurricane-caused financial losses. This is a scary problem.
This is very scary.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of an explanation here from the article. Financial losses per hurricane could triple. Well, annual losses, this is the scary part, could on average rise by a factor of 8.
Wow.
And then it says, some people hope that a growing economy will be able to compensate for the damages caused by climate change, that we will outgrow climate change economically instead of mitigating it. The hope in economic growth as an answer to climate change is ill-founded.
Yeah.
It ain't going to happen, folks.
It ain't going to happen. This is an item from Clean Technica. That picture, by the way, is in Quechee, Vermont, on during her tropical storm Irene.
Wow.
And it's similar to damage that was done in Brattleboro.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact,
up and down the Whetstone Brook and
right.
What's the river in Bennington?
Don't know.
And then what's the river between Dover and?
Again, I don't know. I don't know.
You can drive back. You can drive by there today on the road and see the damage.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, one of the things that people don't realize is that even if they're outside of a flood zone, they can suffer economic loss as a result of these rains that we got. That rain that they had in Louisiana, they had over 33 inches of rain from a
33. I can't even conceive
in
of
some
that.
places. There was a parish. Louisiana parishes are basically like counties.
They're counties,
yeah. There was a parish where 75% of the homes were destroyed.
75%.
75%, according to one of the news media that I picked up, and they said only 1% of them had insurance for flooding because they all believed they didn't need it. And the fact that you're on the side of a mountain or something like that does not mean that you're exempt from the problems.
Right here in Brattleboro, Melrose Place there, Melrose Place, I guess it is. They had flood damage, they had severe flood damage, And it happened in a part of the Melrose that wasn't considered in the flood zone.
Yes.
The river decided to change course, which rivers can do.
Rivers are, there's no law against that.
And it destroyed houses that weren't even in the floodplain.
Yeah, yeah.
And almost every house there was somewhat damaged.
Yes.
Which is why the housing authority is building that new place up by the high school.
This is a worrisome development, and I think we're already seeing this. That horrible storm they had in Alstead, New Hampshire, which was probably about 16 or 17 years ago. It took all the water from that basically big basin north of Keene, New Hampshire, and it channeled it.
Just channeled it right through Alstead.
And I drove through there a couple of weeks later, and a farm field, which was next to the river, that had crops on it, was just stone.
No
It
kidding.
had been scrubbed,
All
but
the crops were gone. Huh?
everything was gone. But there was a house there that was probably about 30 feet higher than the river, and it was the police told the people in it that they should evacuate. They didn't, and as a result died because the house tumbled into the river.
Wow.
So, and
It's a powerful force.
Water is amazing. Okay. We should continue.
I think so.
Our next item is from 7 Days. You got a title on that, Tom?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I should pick up for a picture. Ranger Solar is winning support for 100-acre arrays.
This was a cool article.
Interesting story.
Yeah.
It's in Vermont.
Yep. This is from 7 Days. A Maine-based company appears to have found a formula for winning local backing in Vermont for often controversial solar energy projects. Careful siting, a dose of patience, and willingness to alter plans to overcome objections. Ranger Solar has won outright support in 3 towns for arrays that average 100 acres each.
It's a pretty big array.
And one thing in this article that I really enjoyed reading about was the fact that some person stood up in one of these meetings and said, I don't want to look at that. I want you to plant trees in there. I was
just going to talk about that one. Keep going.
I want you to plant trees that are big enough that we can't see it. And the guy who was representing Ranger Solar said, what kind of trees do you want? And the guy said, I want maple trees. I want them at least 14 feet tall.
And the guy said, poof, you got it.
How do you deal with that? Well, there you go.
They're handling this right.
Yes, I think so. I think there's a lot to be said for that. But the next thing up comes from ZME Science.
Well, we're a little bit further afield today, but Costa Rica.
Look at that picture and tell me if that's real, or if it's some sort of fantasy that somebody with a really good brush was able to.
I think it's real.
Paint. Oh, it is real.
I think it's real.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
this is Costa Rica. It's a rather beautiful picture.
Yeah.
A couple of volcanoes there in the background.
Yeah, looks like.
Costa Rica has been running on electricity for 113 days straight.
There's a funny thing about this story.
Yeah.
And that is, this story has appeared in the news every day. Every day I see this story.
Oh, yeah?
And they always...
In a different location.
No, it's, different publication
location on the web. Yeah.
But every day, it's not like they started at 113 last Thursday and have brought it up day by day with another. It's like some media say Costa Rica has gone 2 months with and another one will say Costa Rica has gone 150 days, and it's different amounts. But
Costa Rica has, fortunately for them, had a lot of local sources of energy.
And they're building more.
Hydro.
This is I should read this. Costa Rica has gone 113 days without using fossil fuels to keep the lights on. This shouldn't surprise anyone who's been keeping tabs on Costa Rica, because in 2015, 99% of its electrical energy was derived from renewable energy sources. Nevertheless, there is great symbolism in getting all your energy from renewables. They've gone through all of this time using almost no fossil fuels, and what are they doing? They're building new, very big geothermal energy plants.
You got it? Use it.
And what are they going to do with that? Well, one thing that
They'll probably
they
be
could
exporting
do,
some.
huh?
They'll probably be exporting some.
They might not. I don't know how the grids work in Central America, but one thing that they could do is use it for synthesizing fuel, so they could make their own fuel to drive cars and so forth.
Absolutely within the realm. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are now up to Friday, September 2nd, and the next item comes up from Argus Media.
The UK power grid supply at a record low in August.
Wow, average.
You'll explain what I
average
mean by
power
that.
supply delivered to the UK grid was at its lowest on record in August. The increase in embedded generation capacity and improved energy efficiency measures combined to cut the amount of demand the transmission system was required to meet. So people are putting up solar power on their rooftops.
Yeah.
Companies are putting up solar power on their rooftops. The Royal Society for the Protection of Birds put up its own wind turbine, which is a very pretty wind turbine, I must say. And that and efficiency has produced big cuts in the electric demand.
So they're winning the war.
Yeah.
They're winning the war.
And they don't need a new nuclear power plant to continue doing that, because there's huge amounts of efficiency that can be introduced in the UK. They have not been efficient in the past.
They haven't needed to.
Yeah, well,
they should have had.
When I lived in the UK,
Yeah.
my father told me he knew only one person who had central heating.
Yeah, that's commonplace there.
And and he said, the rosy red cheeks on the little children, that's because the rooms they play in at home are 45 degrees.
There's a quick takeaway here.
Yeah.
The weaker demand for power from the grid this summer has almost entirely cut the requirement for unprofitable coal plants to operate.
Yes.
So that's kind of a second order consequence.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. Okay. And we are, let's see, we're still in Friday, September 2nd. And now we have an item from Clean Technica.
And we're in India this time.
Yeah, you want to put that picture up?
We got a picture here?
We got a picture.
Yeah, we got a
there
picture.
It is.
There it is.
Yeah.
So it's on the next page here, so
Okay.
I can't see it on my screen.
Ah, okay.
India will begin construction of a 5 gigawatt solar park.
5
now, guys,
gigawatts.
That's big.
That's big.
That's big.
That's what, about
10 Yankees.
Yeah, about Vermont Yankee, when it was originally built, was about
a half a gigawatt.
Half a gigawatt. Yeah. And even 5 gigawatts, even in terms of delivered power, is going to be it's going to be double or more of what the Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant was doing.
Yeah.
So the average, construction on one of India's largest, if not the largest, solar park is expected to begin soon. The Ministry for Energy in the southern state of Karnataka told media outlets that construction on the proposed 5 gigawatt Pavagada solar park will begin there soon. And I don't speak any Indian language, so my pronunciation, I'm sorry to say, I apologize to anyone who
knows
object.
Indian.
Yes, and there are people in Brattleboro who do.
Well, this little interesting takeaway here.
Yep.
This Pavagada Park is among more than 24 solar parks with a cumulative capacity of almost 20 gigawatts already approved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these guys are moving. They're moving from the Stone Age into the 22nd century.
There you go. There you go. And this, by the way, is, I saw a figure for the amount of new energy that had been put on.
That picture back up.
Yeah, new energy that had been put on grids worldwide from renewable power in the last year.
Look at how big
and it was
that is.
kind of stunning. Yes, it's kind of large, isn't it?
Look at the size of it. There's unfortunately not a man standing there to give us some idea, but that's a very large park.
That's a very large park, and those panels could be, I'm going to guess, 3 to 3.5 feet wide each. So, this thing is very big. Yeah.
And I guess those rectangular buildings are basically substations.
I think they are, yeah. Okay, we have this coming up from Energy Matters.
And we got a picture from this one,
I've already
too.
got the picture on the screen. How about that?
how
You don't
about
have to
that?
click a thing.
We have seen this graph work before last week in a different one.
Yes?
But I mean, the graphs are still, they're still pertinent.
Yeah.
And a picture there of North America, where with the circles representing the sources of supply and
Yes.
color coded.
And that area that you're seeing there, which is about the eastern half of the United States and Canada, is all tied in one
Basically,
supergrid.
yeah, they're all tied together
Yeah.
in,
What's the
in one
title?
super grid. NREL, you're going to tell us who that is,
Yep.
explores America's grid potential for wind and solar. Now they're talking about a greater America here. We're
Yes,
talking about
they are.
about half of North America.
Yeah. Energy Matters gave us this. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory uses detailed software in a supercomputer to model how much solar and wind power the eastern United States power grid could accommodate. It said it could have a 30% penetration of wind and solar by the year 2026. And you know, on this point, I'm going to disagree with them.
Yeah.
I think NREL is saying we could have 30% under certain circumstances, but honestly, if we put in distributed power and batteries and other storage facilities and virtual power plants and so forth, I think we could go way beyond 30%.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Interesting article here.
Yeah.
They showed, we're not going to bring it up, but it showed a picture of their supercomputer called
Yes.
the Peregrine, which is liquid cooled.
yes.
Amazing. Now this one gets me because I never heard of this unit before. It has a peak performance of 2.25 petaflops.
Petaflops. Wow.
That's 2.25 million billion calculations per second.
This is arithmetic
Yeah.
calculations.
Yep.
This is important. I hadn't focused on that.
That's faster than we can think.
It sure is. When I first started working with microcomputers, I was a computer engineer, and when I first started working with microcomputers, the computers were operating at speeds of, you know, the 8087 processor in the IBM PC, the math coprocessor, which I learned to program at a time when a lot of the IBM salesmen didn't even know they existed. These things were operating at, you know, 6, 8, 10 megaflops. A flop is a floating point operation per second.
Thank you.
Okay? So if you're talking about something like, I need to add pi plus 6, that operation would take, in those days, as I recall, remember this is like 30 years ago, it would take like 3 flops. Three floating point operations. And
Where's the 3 flops?
no, it's not 3 flops because we were operating at 4.77 megahertz. So it was.
Now you lost me.
Yeah, I lost myself.
You lost everybody else.
Forget it. But what we're talking about here is a calculation speed which is you know, like millions of times faster than what those PCs were doing. And I was in the business for years of doing special programming that was designed to increase the speed, to operate at very high speeds. So I was doing parallel processing and stuff like that when, you know, in fact,
you were ahead of the game.
I was ahead of the game. I actually wrote a spreadsheet at a time when the spreadsheet everybody used in the United States was Lotus 123.
Uh-huh.
And the spreadsheet that I wrote, I'm talking about a spreadsheet application here, not something that you load with a spreadsheet like Lotus 123. The spreadsheet that I wrote was approximately 200 times as fast as Lotus 123.
I'll be darned.
Because I was able to do stuff because I knew how to do.
You knew how to do it. Yeah.
I knew how to do this.
Let me get this map back here a second.
Oh, okay.
It's interesting.
I'm talking about myself. I should be talking about
The what you're looking at there is half of North America.
Basically, yes.
Okay, the northeastern half of North America.
This eastern supergrid includes Manitoba, and in fact, it got cropped off here. It even included Saskatchewan, I think, as I remember.
Saskatchewan's on that map.
Yep.
And a little bit of Texas, but they don't show you yet.
Just a little bit. I did an article, which I think may appear in Green Energy Times, but I wrote an article on the various sinks and substitutes that we've got for
By sinks,
fossil fuels.
You mean things that absorb greenhouse gases?
That's correct. And there are a whole bunch of different things that we can do to eliminate the use of carbon altogether. We don't have to put carbon-based fuels into automobiles. We can use, or buses. I'm not sure about automobiles, but we don't even have to have carbon-based fuels to drive a bus. This was established 70 years ago, more than 70 years ago.
We're driving cars out of hydrogen in the West Coast now.
Right, and but even an internal combustion machine. In Belgium, they were doing internal combustion machines for buses on ammonia during the Second World War.
That's right.
But the other thing is, and I've mentioned this before.
There's no carbon in ammonia.
There's no carbon. I've mentioned this before. The U.S. Navy has developed technology for taking hydrogen and carbon dioxide out of water, seawater, and synthesizing aviation fuel out of it. They said it costs $6 a gallon, and that includes $4.35 almost for the cost of the use of nuclear power to do this. And an aircraft carrier using 200 megawatts of its power can make, according to them, 82,000 gallons per day of aviation fuel.
Which is fuel that they don't have to truck in.
They don't have to truck it in. It costs $6 a gallon, but it costs them $8 a gallon to truck it in.
Yeah. By the way, truck it in, they truck it in by boat.
They truck it in by boat, that's right. And these aircraft carriers are fast ships.
Oh yeah.
And the tankers that come in that bring in the aviation fuel are
They're not fast, right.
And so just getting the two of them to meet and stay together long enough to transfer that fuel.
I've been in the Navy, I know what you mean.
Well, during the Second World War, this was a mind-boggling thing to me. During the Second World War, 2/3 of the operation of time of aircraft carriers at sea was taken up in fuel transfers, going to the place where they were going to do the transfer, doing the transfer, getting back again, because you didn't want to do that transfer in the middle of a combat zone. So, this was a serious problem, and switching to nuclear power for aircraft carriers was a
big move to them.
It was a big move to them.
But they still had to bring in the aviation gasoline.
They still had to bring in the aviation fuel, that's right. So, which by the way is safer now, because it's no longer a high-octane stuff used for internal combustion machines.
It's kerosene.
It's basically kerosene. Yeah. Okay.
Well, we get two more things here. Excuse me, folks.
Excuse him, folks.
To review progress every 5 years. So this is going to be ongoing. They're going to be keeping a watch on it.
Yep.
$100 billion a year in climate finance for developing countries by 2020. That's coming right up.
That's coming right up.
With a commitment to further finance in the future. And then finally, this is the biggie. Once the deal comes into force, countries that have ratified it will have to wait for a minimum of 3 years before they exit. They can't quit.
There you go.
Okay, they want a commitment.
They want a commitment.
So they're serious about it.
They are.
Let's see how it develops.
we've got to do a bunch of other things as well. And one of the things that we have to do, I think, is deal with the fact that there's so many people who are in such trouble because of climate change. And this war in Syria is arguably a result of climate change to some extent, because they've had droughts there and there's no farm production.
Well, that's at least part of the refugee crisis, is people leaving non-productive farms that they've been producing for 3,000 years.
Yep.
We're going to touch base on that, I think, a little further on. Well, the next one here.
From Renew Economy.
Energy disruption. Solar plus storage to be cheaper than the grid in 2017.
In 2017?
Now they talk about Australia, but
They're talking about Australia, but if it's cheaper in Australia, it's probably going to be cheaper in parts of the United States.
I'm sure it will.
Solar plus storage may be cheaper than grid prices within 1 year for some Australian households. A study suggests that the standard tariff offered to households in West Australia will be more expensive than rooftop solar and battery storage combined at some time in 2017. And that, particularly in Western Australia, of all places. Why would this be a surprise? I mean, we're going to see whole communities going in for community solar plus community storage on a microgrid.
Well, one of the things that's happening is kind of amazing is just the progress we've made on storage in the last 10 years.
Yes.
Is probably greater than that was made for the whole previous century.
Yeah, that could be.
I mean, you know, up until 2000,
Yep.
what was storage? It was the battery in your car.
Yeah. The battery in your cell phone. And
That was coming along, but
Yeah. Yeah.
But now they got liquid metal batteries and all sorts
Oh,
of.
they've got so many different things.
There's a lot of people working on.
Saltwater batteries.
Oh yeah.
Flow batteries. You know, beautiful things. Okay. Our next item is we're back to the United States, and this is from the Daily Mail, which I think is I think the Daily Mail is an English publication, but we're back to the United States.
Climate change is causing extreme weather winters to become far more common in the U.S. Not in Vermont, though.
Well, you know, this is strange. Over recent decades, the U.S. has seen a dramatic rise in the number of extreme winter temperature events at opposite ends of the country. According to a new study, the warm west, cold east temperature gap is growing and is likely to driven by greenhouse gas emissions. In other words, if we have cold weather in the northeast part of the United States, it may be because of climate change producing global warming. It's counterintuitive, but nevertheless, there it is. Yeah. And at the same time, we're seeing warmer temperatures in the west. And that's what happened the winter before last.
Well, there's been a rise in wintertime temperature extremes.
Yes?
It can be seen in both the east and west occurring simultaneously. While the east experiences colder winter days, the west is getting warmer.
Yes.
And then there's a footnote here. July, and we've talked about this already, was the hottest month in recorded history.
Yeah.
Worldwide.
Yeah. And you know, if you go through the last almost year now, every month was the hottest month of that in history. You know, we've had a record broken for whatever month we were in every month since last year, I think.
And this July, this is another crazy statistic.
Yep.
This July was the 40th consecutive July with temperatures at least nominally above the 20th century average.
It's the how many?
40th consecutive July with temperatures at least nominally above the 20th century average.
Amazing. So it's been 40 years since we had a month of
cold July
that was colder than the 20th century average.
Wow.
Okay, we're up to Sunday, September 4th.
Picture here.
And here we go, a presidential candidate who is going to make America great again, but he hasn't said how. He's going
It's a secret.
It's a secret. He's going to make America the greatest bankruptcy of all time.
Well, that's within the possibility.
He loves debt.
Unless we have a war.
Yeah, what can I say? But this is from AlterNet, and it's an opinion
Trump's
piece.
fossil fuel ambitions are totally out of step with economic trends.
I was just talking about economic trends, wasn't I?
And you can see the footnote on that picture there. Why stop at coal? We could bring back manual typewriters, slide rules, whale oil for lamps.
There you go. That, by the way, was, I have to admit, my own words put in there.
Oh, was that?
That was me just having fun. Okay.
Well, that's a good one.
Considering how much he brags about his business acumen, which, by the way, folks, has caused 4 major bankruptcies, shouldn't Donald Trump do a better job of keeping up with economic trends? Instead of looking into the future, He's wallowing in nostalgia for coal mining. What? Well, there you go. You know, if he's going to resurrect coal, he's going to have to get his own shovel.
Well, you know, I've been reading about this, and there's many people blaming the loss of coal mines in Appalachia
Yes.
on renewables.
Yes.
And it's not what's happening.
Yeah.
The coal mines, first of all, the coal mines in Appalachia, many of them are reaching the end of their useful existence anyhow. They've
You're
used
right.
they've sold all the coal.
They've dug out as much coal as
But
they
the
can
second,
dig.
and these underground coal mines would have employed maybe 200 people.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that are being replaced in Appalachia are mountaintop removal, where they just take machines and cut the top off a mountain,
They've done that to 500 mountains.
500 mountains,
Yeah.
and then dump all this stuff in the stream.
Yeah.
But instead of 200
3,000
people
miles
in
of
the
stream.
mine, there's only 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And they're talking, and you know, that's where the coal mining
You
job
need it.
losses are going.
Yeah.
Plus, they're going to Montana,
Yes.
they're going to Wyoming,
Yep.
where it's all, again, open pit mining.
Yep.
So the underground coal mine is a thing of the past just because of technology. It has nothing to do with renewables.
It wasn't that long ago, and I'm talking about during my lifetimes, 50, 60, 70 years ago. Wales had a lot of its income from coal.
From coal. It's underground mine.
There are no mines left in
No
Wales.
mines left in Wales.
None.
Yeah.
And in
But
fact,
there was movies made about the miners
absolutely,
in Maine, I'm sure,
yeah,
you know.
there were.
Yeah.
How green is my pasture? Is that
Valley?
How green is my valley?
Yeah.
That
yeah.
was
about
one.
I remember
It was
that.
about a mining community, and as a matter of fact, the Englishman that went up the mountain and came down went up the hill and came down the mountain.
I don't know that.
That was a recent one. It's funny. Hugh Grant, and he goes into this town where people are just very, very proud of their mountain, which he's surveying, and he says, "I don't think that's a mountain, folks. It's not tall enough." So they make it higher. and trick
a
him,
good premise, yeah.
into staying until he's
he
gone
fell
up.
in love, right?
Oh, of course. You know, I mean, with Tara Fitzgerald, and
With who?
Tara
I
Fitzgerald.
don't know her. Yeah. Any relation to Barry?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
probably.
we should get on.
Moving along.
Yeah. Our next item is from the Hutchinson News.
Okay. The Hutchinson, which is a town in Kansas,
Yep.
Siemens plant providing turbines for the third Oklahoma project this year. This also is a big
It is.
project.
Siemens Energy announced its Hutchinson, Kansas plant. Siemens is a German company, by the way. Is filling
It's a big German company.
Big
like
German,
a German
huge
General
German-
Electric.
Yeah. From Apex Green Energy for 64 wind turbines for Great Plains Wind in Oklahoma. Officials expect the 147 megawatt project to be operational this year. It's really impressive. to me.
147 megawatts.
But these things just go in so fast, it's unbelievable. This will bring Siemens completed orders for Apex Clean Energy in Oklahoma to 600 megawatts for the year.
Okay.
600 megawatts in 1 year in Oklahoma. Why are they fracking?
Money.
Money, that's right, money.
Interesting description of this particular turbine that they're using in this project.
Yeah.
Rotor diameter is 350 feet.
So
That's the total.
it's just shy of actually, yes, it's just a few feet shy of a football field, including its end zones.
Yeah. Hub height of 250 feet.
Okay,
So it's 250 feet in the air.
right.
Okay. And the turbine blades are 170 feet.
Yeah,
These things are getting bigger.
they're getting big. They are, but the tips of the blade, the lowest it goes is about eight stories up.
8 or 10, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. 170 feet
And you know, it's interesting as
Times
the turbines.
2.
Yeah,
compared to 250 feet hub. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's interesting to think of. This is something most people don't know. As these turbines get bigger,
Yeah.
the blades are moving slower.
Yeah.
They are higher off the ground.
Yeah.
The turbines are quieter.
Yeah.
They are safer for birds.
Yeah.
So, you know, this objection to industrial wind, industrial, what does that mean? I don't know.
That's a good question. I've never seen it defined.
What they want to do is they want to establish in your mind the idea that this is not good because it's industrial. So, the
Well,
smoke and the fumes.
I don't know what kind of opposition there would be if somebody announced they wanted to build a new steam plant in Windham County.
Steam plant?
Steam, yeah.
Oh,
I don't know what kind of maybe none at all.
Well, if we wanted to burn coal, oil, natural gas, or even wood,
Yeah.
I would expect to have a lot of opposition.
Well, would you have as much opposition as we're seeing to turbines?
I don't think so, to tell you the truth. And
Well,
honestly,
what's happened is a small but very vocal group of opponents.
yes.
And they're making a lot of noise.
And I looked
And they're
into.
scaring people.
They are scaring people, and honestly, as I said before, I think it's a form of abuse. It is just plain abuse. And they have said a lot of things that if you check it out for yourself, you will find out are not true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I had a neighbor who was telling me all the things that were wrong with wind power, and after she told me a list of things, I wrote them all down and checked them all out, and I've been keeping track of them for years since. And every single thing she said was demonstrably untrue,
Okay.
except for I don't like them.
Well, we do know that there is such a thing as wind turbine syndrome,
Yes.
and it's spread by word of mouth.
Yes. And the Australian Medical Association said human health effects of wind turbines are caused by stress. They're real. They're caused by stress.
Yeah.
They are the result of the scare tactics of
Yep.
anti-wind activists. That is their
That's
official
basically what's happening.
official position of the Australian Medical Association.
Okay.
And
by
it's
that.
based on a whole lot of research papers that
by
were
that.
published in Australia. Okay, we're up to Monday, September 5th, and this is Live Mint.
What's that shaking?
What?
The room is shaking.
The room is shaking?
An earthquake rattles Oklahoma and 6
Oh,
neighboring
yeah, wow.
states. Must have been a different earthquake.
Yeah. And you know what? This is from CNN. We're not up to Monday, September 5th. We're still on...
We're still on Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday. But this is from CNN. The Oklahoma Corporation Commission told operators to shut down 35 disposal wells that have played a role that may have played a role in a 5.6 magnitude earthquake that shook at least 6 states on Saturday. The state's governor said. She said the directive is mandatory and added that the EPA is investigating the earthquake as well.
Well, earthquakes aren't common in Oklahoma.
They are now.
They are not, yeah.
They are.
I'll
People
tell you-
don't realize this. They are 1,000 times as common as they were only 10 years ago.
Well, I'll tell you what's happening.
Yeah.
I'll tell you
go
what's
ahead.
happening. It's called fuel injection.
Yes. Well,
And it's a fluid injection. I mean.
fluid.
It's
fuel
a controversial
injection.
tactic tied to hydraulic fracturing.
Yes. They have to get rid of all their wastewater.
Exactly. When oil and gas is pumped out of the ground, salty water often flows with it. This water, which can contain heavy metals and other pollutants, is typically injected under high pressure back into disposal wells. And
Right.
that seems to be, it's not proven yet, but it seems to be what's causing the earthquakes.
Well, since the beginning of fracking in Oklahoma, earthquakes have increased proportionately to the amount of fracking, and they have got to the point that it's 1,000 times what it was. There are more earthquakes now in Oklahoma per year than there are in California, which is a bigger state, and it's known for its earthquakes.
Known for earthquakes, yeah.
Oklahoma is known basically for being part of an area of the United States that's more or less earthquake free.
Well, it's logical that they're doing things to disrupt the underground.
Yes.
And, they pressurize water, pump it underground. It's moving those rocks around.
Yes.
And,
It's creating stresses.
well,
Lubricating the joints of the earth.
that's a good way of looking
Okay,
at it.
now we get up to
Now we get up to
September
Monday.
5th, and we are at Live Mint.
This is an interesting picture of some guys washing off the...
You could put it
I'll
up.
put it up. Yeah, that would be helpful.
So everybody can see it. There you go.
Duh. Yeah, the guy's cleaning off the solar panels, which makes sense. You know, I've never heard of that officially as a cost of doing business.
Yeah,
But you're going to get more output if you keep them clean,
that's right.
and you make a few jobs.
Yeah.
Okay, harvesting solar power could propel growth in farm income. Now that's about India, but it's true anywhere.
It is. India has an ambitious goal of achieving 100,000 megawatts of solar power capacity by 2022. That is an impressive number.
Particularly for India.
Yeah, as well as doubling farm incomes. Both of these targets can be game changers for rural India if implemented together. And this is suggested by a recent study by the International Council for Research in International Economic Relations. And, you know, basically what we're seeing here is that we have a synergy between these two businesses.
It's a multifaceted synergy, because besides more income coming in, one of these articles I read is like having another crop field 15 feet in the air.
Yes.
But they're also running solar-powered pumps,
Which is a big deal because they've
which
been
they
using
get more water.
Right. They used to be running diesel-powered
Yeah.
pumps, and so they had a lot of pollution from the power systems that they were using to get their water.
Yep.
Now they can do it with solar power. It'll be interesting to see what the result of all that is, because they're pumping so much water around that I wonder how much they're affecting
There could
them.
be some second-order effects
there might be some
like we
second-
just saw in Oklahoma.
Right. But, you know, we'll see what happens.
This is a good takeaway right here.
Yeah.
Studies across the globe have proved that the shade of solar panels have no negative impact on crop growth if arranged in a particular configuration that allows sunlight and wind to pass through to the plants.
Yes.
So all you got to do is a little bit of planning.
Yes. Yeah. And
Sounds
you
like
know,
a win-win situation
one of the
to
things
me.
that we've seen a lot of is solar arrays with sheep grazing under them.
Or goats climbing on top of
Yeah,
them.
right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
and cows.
Yeah.
In Ireland, it's not at all uncommon to see windmills up on a hill and there's cows contentedly
All over the
grazing
place.
all
Yes,
over the place.
contentedly grazing. Okay, and now we
Let's get
are
this picture
up
up
to an article from Renews.
Here we go. Red Tea, which is a company, clears Scott's storage tests, and there is some Red Tea batteries.
That's right. UK energy storage manufacturer Red Tea has completed testing of a 75 kilowatt, 1.86 megawatt hour vanadium redox flow battery system to be installed on the Scottish island of Gia.
You got it. That's right.
Is
I
it
looked
right?
it up. That's Gia.
Okay.
Like in Carmen.
Carmen, okay. Yeah. The London company will install by the end of the year 7 15 kilowatt, 240 kilowatt hour vanadium redox flow batteries.
I didn't even know what they were.
Well, we've talked about flow batteries.
Yeah,
many
But
times.
there's just another version of them popping
It's
up.
another version to remove constraints on the island's 1 megawatt wind farm.
Gia is a small island.
Yeah.
There's only about 200-300 people living on it.
Yeah. So what they're getting is, instead of using diesel oil to produce their electricity, which
They got a wind
the
farm.
island of Egg did this thing where they used to have electric power only a few hours a day,
right?
and they replaced
Gia
it.
was probably the same thing.
Gia was probably the same thing, and now with this is a 1.86 megawatt hour, and you know, this is an interesting combination because 75 kilowatts is the maximum power this thing will produce, but it will produce it for a lot of hours because it's 1.86 megawatt hours.
Yeah.
So this thing will go for
You can go for a couple of weeks if it has to.
well, 70. It can certainly go for a lot of hours. Let me put it that way. But this is a system that, you know, the batteries are being charged by the wind turbines, and one of the things that you've mentioned almost every time we've talked about flow batteries is that you can make them as big or as small as, well, I don't know about it small, but you can make them as big as you want, and you can
All
extend
you need
that.
is the reservoir.
Yeah, you can extend the megawatt hours that are being
Exactly.
carried just by making a bigger,
Exactly.
putting all the stuff in bigger pots.
Yeah.
It's an interesting kind of thing. But these things in the picture are
Bring them back up.
those are vanadium flow batteries that are built by Red Tea. And honestly, I can't tell you what any part of the interior of that thing is. But clearly they were designed to be carried around on roads and things like that, and brought in
by truck.
by
yeah.
truck and hooked
They
up.
probably stay there. But
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know about the ones on Gia. I imagine they're brought in by
by boat.
boat, and then they use a truck to get them to the
By the
place
way,
where they go.
Gia is in the Mull of Kintyre.
The Mull of Kintyre. There you go. I'm glad
That
you
was a
told me
Beatles
that.
song, I think.
Gia is in the Mull of Kintyre?
Yeah. No, the Mull of Kintyre was a Beatles song.
Okay. I don't
I
recognize
think
it.
McCartney was from the Mull of Kintyre.
Really?
I think so.
Wow. Huh. Okay, should we continue?
Why not? Can't dance.
Okay. Our next item is from Growing Produce. How's that for the name of a publication?
Is the produce growing, or are they growing more, or are they telling you how to grow it?
I don't know. Maybe all of the above.
Well, the study shows a slow snow melt and lower water availability in the West.
Yeah.
The snow melt is slower.
Yeah, this is a very complicated kind of article, I think, in terms of the contents. You have to kind of follow it and get what it says. But the synopsis here is Western communities are facing effects of warming climate with slower and earlier snowmelt, reducing stream flows, and possibly the amount of water reaching reservoirs used for drinking water and agriculture, according to a recent study. Counterintuitively, as the climate warms, there is actually a slower snowmelt.
Well, it explains that.
Yeah.
The warming occurs earlier
Yep.
when the days are shorter and we have less sunlight.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what's happening. Lower snow melt reduces the amount of moisture being pushed deep into the subsurface where it's less likely to evaporate. So it's staying at the surface and it's blowing away.
It's just another problem that we've got. That from Growing Produce. Now we're up to Tuesday
Tuesday the 6th.
September 6th.
And we're coming closer to home.
Yes.
This is an interesting article. I'd like to drive down there and see this.
Yeah, this is from the Massachusetts Daily Collegian.
UMass Solar Energy Initiative to install new solar panels and provide electrical power at discounted rates. And here's a picture of their parking lot.
Yep. A solar energy initiative by the University of Massachusetts will have 15,576 solar panels newly installed this year, with an aim to save $6.2 million in a span of 20 years. There will be 8 solar panel installations, with 6 of them placed on rooftops and the other 2 placed above parking lots. And what we're seeing here
That
is
makes a lot of
the
sense.
parking lot. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
It's not detracting from the ability to park cars.
No?
It's actually protecting the cars
Yes.
and collecting.
I'm reminded of a place where I used to work
Yeah.
that was right on Cape Cod Bay.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was within. Well, it wasn't Cape Cod Bay. It was Plymouth Bay, but it was.
I wouldn't know the difference.
Well, there's a barrier between the two. It's not a big deal, but I was that close. You know, I was within 150 yards of the water, and I parked my car in the parking lot. And when I went out at one night to drive home, I found 2 very oddly shaped dents in my hood, and I couldn't figure out how that had happened. And then sometime later, looking out the window from my office, I saw a seagull drop a clam onto the parking lot to break its shell.
Pretty smart, really.
Yeah, well, what can you say?
Yeah,
Anyway, this, you said protect cars? Yes.
it does.
And you know, there was a fellow who came down to Brattleboro from Green Mountain Power who was talking about the installation in Rutland,
Yeah.
which was right kind of in the city or at the edge of the city, and he said periodically, kids going by will throw rocks at the panels to see if they can break them.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah, kids
they
will do
have
that.
not achieved that.
That's
These things are not easy to break.
This is an interesting article,
Yeah.
by the way. It's a long article, but the money that they're talking about that the university is going to save is significant.
Yeah, this is important too. People think renewable energy is expensive, but when you look at the reasons why people are putting in renewable power, and by the way, the university does not qualify for those federal incentives because those are tax incentives. Those are taken off taxes. They don't pay taxes.
They don't pay taxes, yeah.
So they're saving money for other reasons that ordinary human beings probably could too.
They're expecting to save $89,000 in electricity for the first year.
Yeah.
And it won't even be completed by the first year.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've got about 8 minutes.
Well,
No, we don't have 8 minutes. We've got more than that. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble with I don't know how
That's
many
my
minutes
fault.
we've got. Microgrid knowledge is the next item.
nested microgrid proposed for the town of New Platts.
This is important. This is a nested microgrid.
We're going to find out what that is.
Yeah, the town of New Paltz, New York has proposed a nested microgrid project, a $12 million system to maintain critical energy supplies. Within the microgrid are 10 independent zones or nodes, each of which has its own energy resources to serve one or more of the critical facilities within the geographic footprint. This is from microgrid
So a node
knowledge.
might have a hospital,
Yeah,
another node might have the school,
yeah,
all of which have generation capacity
right,
attached to it.
right.
Or
And they're
will as
attached
part
to
of
each
this,
other.
But they can disconnect.
But they can disconnect. So in Brattleboro, we've got a high school,
Yeah,
and not very far from that, very close to it, is the ambulance service.
yeah.
And just down the road from that is the hospital. And
Yep.
there is a
That Could be
supermarket,
3 nodes.
and a
That's a
couple of
fourth node, yeah.
a couple of pharmacies. You could have 3, 4, 5 nodes there, and if the grid goes down, they can be mutually supportive.
Mm-hmm.
Or in the event of some kind of failure of one of them,
Totally operate independently.
operate entirely independently. This is an interesting thing. Okay, should we
Well,
go
there's
on?
more and more people are looking at different ways of doing
yeah,
things, and some of these ideas are going to hit real hard.
Absolutely. Our next item is from the BBC.
Oil price jumps on Russian and Saudi plans.
Yeah, well, we'll see how far that goes. The
Yeah.
price of oil jumped after Russia and Saudi Arabia agreed to discuss ways to stabilize the oil market. They want to make money. And the announcement was made by the country's energy ministers, Alexander Novak and Khalid Al-Fatih. The price of Brent crude initially jumped by 5%, but then it fell back to stand 1.6% higher at $47.56 per barrel. And
That's pretty cheap compared to what it's been.
yeah, it's about what, 40% of its high, do you think?
That's about right.
Yeah, and it's about it's about 1 1/3 times its low. So, I don't know. Should we go on, or?
Well, I'll just mention this. Russia
Yep.
and Saudi Arabia are the world's 2 largest oil producers.
Yeah, and fossil fuels account for 65% of the money that Russia gets in foreign trade, which means that if
That's
you
a
want to,
significant part of their economy, isn't it?
yeah, 3 organizations that are kind of in bed together because of the price of fossil fuels are Russia,
Okay.
Saudi Arabia,
Okay.
Koch Industries.
Okay.
So if you're interested in why the Heritage Foundation gives you information that's kind of like Russia's information, that's why.
That's why, huh?
Yeah. I happen to think that Koch Industries and Russia are just right together.
Well, didn't Daddy Koch make his money in Russia?
He started to,
Yeah.
and the same thing was true of what's his name? Was it Welsh who started the John Birch Society?
I don't know about Welch, but yeah, I
There
know
were-
Koch
there
was
are-
an oil engineer in
the-
Russia for most of his life.
The
He came back with a terrible hatred of communism.
Yeah, that's what he said.
So
But
he
I
did.
think that there's a reason here that is connected there with why it is that the Heritage Foundation, Cato Institute, the American Legislative Exchange Council, the State Policy Network, and all of these things, if you consider all of them and the way they work and the fact that they've got these things going in various states, that whole thing, if you wanted to change the names, you know, and the descriptions and just say this is a committee and that is a party cell and so forth, it sounds a lot like what was going on in Soviet Union in the 1920s.
It does, doesn't
and
it?
I've just thought,
imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Right?
What do they want? They want an oligarchy that says this is well, instead of saying this property belongs to the people, they're saying, but you elected these people. That's why they're in office. And honestly, I think it's all the same.
Well, who do you want dictating what you do, the government or a bunch of private industries?
Are you kidding? So I remember when I was in college, somebody was talking about how wonderful nuclear power was in private, you know, the peaceful use of nuclear power. And I just sat there and said, do you really want companies who have no interest in anything aside from making money to be in charge of a bunch of nuclear power plants and what they do? And this girl just went, I don't know. She said, what would you do with nuclear? I mean, there's, and I said, the only use that I can see for nuclear power is military.
As it's presently constituted, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are ways of producing energy out of nuclear that aren't anywhere near as dangerous as what we've been doing.
Well, and you can go back through the Energy Week archives and find the energy amplifier.
Absolutely.
You know, and see,
absolutely. Very interesting concept.
Yeah. Anyway, we
right here, folks. Right here.
Right here. That's right. We are up to
Wednesday,
September 7th.
The G20 balks at ending the dumbest policy of all.
The dumbest policy of all.
Fossil fuel subsidies.
This is from Clean Technica. The G20 meeting in China may have been notable for the decision by both China and the United States to ratify the Paris Climate Treaty, but the G20 nations are still taking little action on ending fossil fuel subsidies, despite agreeing to a move in 2009 to end what has been described as the dumbest policy, that's in quotes, dumbest policy in the world. And yeah, why?
That's Bloomberg saying this.
Yeah, and why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why are they not ending this policy? Who is paying who here?
A little bit of inside, how would you call it? Cooperation?
Yes, that's a word for corruption. Okay. And it isn't all corruption.
There's a good takeaway here.
Yeah.
If governments are to have any hope, this also is from Bloomberg, it's a quote. If governments are to have any hope of meeting their climate targets, they need to stop paying people to use and produce fossil fuels.
Absolutely.
Bingo.
Yeah. How much money goes into fossil fuels every year? The estimates that I've seen have been pretty consistently around $500 billion a year. That's $500 billion a year going into industries that are burning fossil fuels or supplying fossil fuels to burn.
And those subsidies have been going on for over 100 years.
And on top of that, if you look at the external costs of fossil fuels, and I've been seeing this coming from financial organizations, not Greenpeace or the Sierra Club, not the fossil fuel industry itself, but the fossil fuels industries have external costs, according to the financial companies that I've been seeing, like Citigroup,
that we're all paying.
That we are all paying in one way or another of $1.7 to $7 trillion per year. $1.7 trillion is $250 very roughly per person worldwide.
And much of that is health related.
And much of it is health related. And you know, the World Health Organization said on average people in Western Europe are dying 7 months or more earlier than they would if they were not exposed to the air pollution that they're exposed to. And I got news for you. If you're living in Vermont, you're living in an area where there is air pollution.
And we don't generate it.
You don't smell it, but it's there. It
comes from the Midwest.
It comes. Where does the air come from that goes over Vermont?
It comes from the Midwest.
Most of it, almost all of it, in fact, comes from New York, It's been over
and
Michigan.
places beyond.
It's been over Pennsylvania,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
It's been over Wisconsin, Illinois,
Yeah.
Indiana. That's where the air comes from. And yeah, it doesn't smell bad because, you know, the big...
Been diluted.
It's been diluted, but you're breathing it. And if you want really clean air, you probably want to move west of the Mississippi River. Okay, we are done with our show, I believe. And
Right.
it's time
I don't
for
have
us
any
to-
more here.
You don't have any more. I don't have any more. We should put us up and say goodnight to everybody.
Good night, folks.
See you later.
I would hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.